Okay, so it says the results of a survey that showed on average an adult sleeps 6.7 hours per night. They give me the standard deviation of 1.2 hours. I want to use Chebyshev's theorem, which you take one, oops, let me get a color that'll actually show up, where you'll take one, I'm trying, 1 minus 1 over however many standard deviations squared. All right, so the problem is I don't know how many standard deviations this is, but if I just kind of look at this and I say, well, 6.7, I thought I changed that to white so it would show up a little better. I guess that's the whitest it's going to get. If I take 6.7 minus 2 times 1 standard deviation, do you know what that equals? It's a 4.3. If I take 6.7 plus 2 times 1 standard deviation, that's that, 9.1. Well, the question is how would I have known it's 2 if I didn't just sit here and try problems? Well, think of this as an algebra problem. Couldn't I simply take 6.7 minus, now in algebra we tend to write the number first, x being my standard deviation that I'm solving for, and then I could subtract, I could take 6.7 and subtract 4.3 on this side and move the 1.2x to that side to make it positive, get 2.4 equals 1.2x, and then I divide both sides and I actually get that 2. So that would be a way to actually solve it. So now if I put that in the formula, 1 minus 1 over 2 squared, I get 3 over 4, which is the 75%. So let's see if we can use kind of this same thing to do the next one. So I'm clicking over here. So let's get rid of that. Let's try to do the next one here. So it says between 3.7 and 9.7. So I'll only need to do one of these because as you saw, the 4.3 was less than 2 standard deviations of the mean, and this was more than. So I only need to do one of these, meaning that I want to know how did they get 3.7 out of 6.7 minus how many standard deviations. So of course I can move the 1.2x to this side. I can subtract 3.7, which would give me, so in other words, I did 6.7 minus 3.7, and now I can divide that by 1.2, and I get 2.5. So I use my formula, 1 over 1, 2.5 squared. So I throw that in my calculator, 1 minus 1 over 2.5 squared. And you will see you get the 0.84. So that gives me that value right there. All right, the last part is now saying to compare this actually with the empirical rule. So remember what the empirical rule states is my empirical rule. Let's try yellow, see what that looks like. And they didn't like yellow. We're going to try yellow again. My empirical rule states that if I'm 1 standard deviation below and above the mean, so my mean is 6.7, if I'm 1 standard deviation, that's 68% of my data. If I'm 2 standard deviations, that's 95% of my data. So that's what the empirical rule states. So that's what it's asking. The 4.3 and the 9.1, the 4.3 and the 9.1 was 2 standard deviations below and above the mean, and they're asking you to compare that. So you can definitely see the percentage obtained using the empirical rule is greater than using Chebyshev's theorem.